presentation, actually, I'm planning to give an overall aspect of diabetes, mainly in the clinical aspect. And as we go, I am planning to touch some of the major researches we are conducting in our center. So what is diabetes? Diabetes mellitus is a molecular disorder characterized by high level of blood glucose, which is termed as hyperglycemia, resulting from defects in insulin production, insulin action, or both. സ്റ്റുഡൻസിന് കുറച്ച് ഇതിൽ ഞാൻ പറയുന്നതിൽ എന്തെങ്കിലും മനസ്സിലാവാൻ ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ആ സമയത്ത് എന്നെ ഒന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ മതി. കേൾക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്നുണ്ടോ? Okay. So in the most severe form, diabetes mellitus lead to diabetes ketoacidosis. So that means liver is breaking down fat at a faster rate and produce ketone bodies. So these ketone bodies can be very harmful to your body, and gradually it can lead to coma, and in the absence of effective treatment, it can lead to death. And patients who are under medication can experience hypoglycemia. So hypoglycemia is considered to be a major risk while treating diabetes, because that also can harm the individuals. And hypoglycemia, so the major goal of diabetes management and diabetes treatment, whenever we say diabetes treatment or management, is to maintain your blood glucose level in the recommended range, with at the same time eliminating the risk of hypoglycemia. So these two characteristics should be satisfied when you are managing diabetes. So the long-term effects of diabetes mellitus can be damage, dysfunction, and failure of various organs such as eyes, kidneys, nerves, heart, and blood vessels. So these are characterized as micro and macrovascular complications. Eyes, kidneys, nerves comes under microvascular complications, and heart and blood vessels comes under macrovascular complications. So all these complications are together termed as diabetes comorbidities. And now we all are experiencing the pandemic era. So diabetes is associated with an increased risk of severe COVID-19. So when I say that diabetes is associated with an increased risk of COVID-19, that doesn't mean that if you are a diabetes patient, there is an increased chance of getting COVID-19. That is you should understand in that way. And so let me touch about the history of diabetes. So the history goes back to 2nd century, where Artesius of Cappadocia, he was a Greek physician who provided the first accurate description of diabetes, and he coined the term diabetes, which means to pass through. That describes the copious urination, the large amount of urine, which is urination associated with diabetes. And in 17th century, Thomas Willis, another physician, added the term mellitus, which describes the extremely sweet taste of urine of the diabetes patients. And in 19th century, Claude Bernard discovered the glycogenic action of liver. And then later, Oskar Minkowski and John von Mering recognized that diabetes is the disease of pancreas. So they observed that dog developed diabetes with the characteristic symptoms of the disease after the removal of pancreas. And this confirmed the central role of pancreas in the pathogenesis of diabetes. And in the 20th century, Banting, Best, and MacLeod showed fruitful progress in insulin discovery. So today we are talking about diabetes. So 2021 is a landmark year in the history of diabetes or diabetes management. ആർക്കെങ്കിലും അറിയാമോ എന്താണ് ലാൻഡ്മാർക്ക് ഡിസ്കവറി എന്നുള്ളത്? അറിയാമായിരിക്കും.
സ്റ്റുഡൻസ് പൊതുവെ അങ്ങനെ പ്രതികരിക്കാറില്ല ക്ലാസ്സുകളിൽ. ഈ ഓൺലൈൻ്റെ പ്രശ്നം.
അല്ലെ വെറുതെ ഡയബറ്റിസ് മാനേജ്മെന്റ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഈ സ്ലൈഡിൽ തന്നെ ആൻസറും ഉണ്ട്. ഓക്കെ,
അറിയാവുന്നവർക്ക് ആൻസർ പറയാം.
ഓക്കെ, 1921 ഇൻസുലിൻ ഡിസ്കവർ ചെയ്തത്. സോ 2021 is the 100th year of insulin discovery. So worldwide ഒരുപാട് ഇവന്റ്സ്, ആക്ച്വലി ഈവൻ കോവിഡ് ഏറെ അല്ലായിരുന്നെങ്കിൽ ഒരുപാട് ബിഗ് ലെവലിലുള്ള സെലിബ്രേഷൻസ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇവന്റ്സ് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നേനെ. ബട്ട് ഇപ്പോൾ വെർച്വൽ ആയിട്ട് ഒരുപാട് ഇവന്റ്സ് ഓൺ ഗോയിങ് ആണ്. എസ്പെഷ്യലി ഈ ഫസ്റ്റ് ഹാഫ് ഓഫ് 1921 ഡിസ്കവർ ചെയ്തത്. സോ മൂവിങ് ഓൺ, classification of diabetes. There are mainly two type of diabetes that we know: type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. And type 1 diabetes is caused by the autoimmune beta cell destruction. Beta cells are the pancreatic beta cells which produce insulin. So the autoimmune destruction of these beta cells cause type 1 diabetes. And type 2 diabetes is due to progressive beta cell loss in the background of insulin resistance. So insulin resistance എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ നമ്മുടെ ബോഡിയിലെ ഇൻസുലിൻ റെസ്പോൺസീവ് ടിഷ്യൂസ് ഉണ്ട്, ലിവർ, അഡിപ്പോസ് ടിഷ്യൂ ആൻഡ് സ്കെലിറ്റൽ മസിൽസ്. സോ ഈ മസിൽസ് ആണ് ഇൻസുലിൻ റെസ്പോൺസീവ് ആയിട്ട് ഗ്ലൂക്കോസ് അപ്ടേക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. സോ വെൻ ദീസ് ടിഷ്യൂസ് ആർ നോട്ട് റെസ്പോണ്ടിങ്, the amount of glucose in your body increases, and then pancreas produces more insulin. So idoru negative feedback loop pole function cheyidittu oduvil insulin produce cheyadavum, and that leads to beta cell aa condition aanu insulin resistance nu parayunnathu. And that insulin resistance gradually lead to beta cell loss. സോ നമ്മുടെ ടെക്സ്റ്റ് ബുക്കിൽ ഈവൻ നിങ്ങൾ സ്കൂളിൽ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ +2 ലെവലിൽ പഠിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ വി ഓൾവേസ് സ്റ്റഡീഡ് ലൈക്ക് ടൈപ്പ് 1 ഡയബറ്റിസ് ഇസ് ഇൻസുലിൻ ഡിപ്പെൻഡന്റ് ഡയബറ്റിസ് ആൻഡ് ടൈപ്പ് 2 ഇസ് നോൺ ഇൻസുലിൻ ഡിപ്പെൻഡന്റ് ഡയബറ്റിസ്. സോ ദാറ്റ് കൺസെപ്റ്റ് ഹാസ് ബിക്കം ഒബ്സൊലീറ്റ് because now studies have shown that both type 1 and type 2 diabetes are insulin dependent. And whenever we say diabetes, we majorly focus on type 2 diabetes because here you can see 90 to 95% of all diagnosed cases are type 2 diabetes, and type 1 diabetes is 5 to 10%. And the third and the most important diabetes type is gestational diabetes mellitus, which is diagnosed in the second or third trimester of pregnancy. And there are other type of diabetes called monogenic diabetes syndromes. Monogenic diabetes syndromes means normally we consider diabetes as a polygenic disease because ഒരുപാട് ജീൻസ് ഇതിലേക്ക് കോൺട്രിബ്യൂട്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ടെന്ന് നമുക്കറിയാം. അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഡിസ്ഫങ്ഷൻ ഓർ അബ്നോർമാലിറ്റീസ് ഇൻ മൾട്ടിപ്പിൾ ജീൻസ് കോസ് ഡയബറ്റിസ് എന്നാണ് നമ്മൾ എപ്പോഴും പഠിക്കുന്നത്. But monogenic diabetes syndromes are caused by the mutation of single genes. And example are neonatal diabetes and maturity onset diabetes of the young, which is called MODY. And then diseases of the exocrine pancreas like cystic fibrosis and pancreatitis. And the last one is drug or chemical induced diabetes, such as with glucocorticoid use in the treatment of HIV or after organ transplantation. And the specific type of diabetes contribute to 1 to 5% of the diagnosed cases of diabetes. And you also might have heard about pre-diabetes. pre-diabetes is a term that used to distinguish people who are at increased risk of developing diabetes. These people have impaired glucose tolerance and impaired fasting glucose. That means their glucose levels are higher than the normal level, but those are not as high as to be categorized as diabetes. So these people are considered to be at higher risk of developing diabetes as well as other comorbidities like heart diseases and stroke. So progression of diabetes in this pre-diabetes patients is a major study or a major area of research, because how we can prevent or delay the progression of diabetes in this pre-diabetes patients. So multiple studies have suggested that weight loss and increased physical activity among people with pre-diabetes can prevent or delay diabetes and may return blood glucose levels to normal. So pre-diabetes patients, when you talk about diabetes management, diabetes education plays an important role. So pre-diabetes patients, majority of these patients are patients with family history. So now most of the clinicians treat diabetes patients as a with their family, because they give diabetes education to all family members, so that if they are pre-diabetes, if they have pre-diabetes, they can prevent the progression by focusing more on physical activity and dietary interventions and weight loss. And coming to etiology, I already discussed this point that type 1 diabetes mellitus, it is majorly caused by immunological factors, that the T cells, our own T cells become auto-reactive and destruct the beta cells of the pancreas. And so when you have less beta cells, you produce less insulin, and that lead to type 1 diabetes. And then genetic factors. If your mother or father has type 1 diabetes, then you have more chance of getting type 1 diabetes mellitus. And environmental factors like enterovirus infection. The viral infections can lead to uh, the beta cell destruction and type 1 diabetes. So uh, recently a research in our center, we have started a research to study whether COVID infection can lead to beta cell destruction, or because worldwide reports showed that after COVID infection, many people developed diabetes, or the severity of the disease aggravated. So whether COVID infection in our population is making any change in the beta cell, or beta cells, or the level of insulin secretion. So that's one major research we have started, and I'm sure globally people might be focusing on that aspect. And coming to type 2 diabetes, earlier it was believed that type 2 diabetes is caused by the insensitivity of GLUT4, which is the receptor for insulin receptor. But now studies have shown that it's a feedback loop involving islet beta cells and insulin sensitive tissues. Because insulin resistance, when the insulin sensitive tissues don't respond to glucose or insulin, beta cells increase the production of insulin output to maintain normal glucose tolerance. And then glucose levels, and but the tissues being insensitive, the glucose levels keep on increasing, and then that lead to decline in insulin secretion and progressive beta cell failure. So this functions as a feedback loop. and that leads to postprandial plasma glucose level increase, and then fasting plasma glucose level also rise and lead to overt diabetes. Overt diabetes is a term that represent severe type 2 diabetes. So earlier, for type 2 diabetes management, people were using only oral hypoglycemic agents. But this discovery that insulin type 2 insulin plays an important role uh, in the etiology of type 2 diabetes lead to early initiation of insulin in type 2 diabetes patients. So that is another area where researchers are going on, that whether early initiation in early insulin initiation in type 2 diabetes mellitus, whether it is required or not. And studies have shown that if a 1 year delay in receiving treatment intensification means insulin initiation can result in an increase in the cumulative incidence of nephropathy, neuropathy, retinopathy, and significantly increased risk of myocardial infarction, heart failure, stroke, and composite CV events. So, if you remember, all these are diabetes comorbidities. So in type 2, so these results clearly show that in type 2 diabetes mellitus also we need insulin. And now coming to the epidemiology of diabetes mellitus. So this is called an IDF Diabetes Atlas. IDF is International Diabetes Federation. So they publish the diabetes statistics each year. So this is the 2020 results. So the statistics is of actually of it's of 2019. So according to this, worldwide 463 million people are affected with diabetes, and it is projected to increase by 51%. The number is supposed to increase to 700 million in the year of 2045. And when it comes to India, currently we have 77 million diabetes patients, and it's projected to include 134 increase to 134 million. That is the increase is 74%. And here you can understand that we are given this red color. So we are considered to be the diabetes capital of the world. And China, we don't have the correct statistics, but we believe that they are ahead of us. But in 2045, according to the projections, India is going to surpass China by 2045. And coming to the diagnosis of diabetes mellitus, the diagnosis is made based on 3 parameters: HbA1c, fasting plasma glucose, and oral glucose tolerance test. So HbA1c എന്താണെന്ന് എല്ലാവർക്കും അറിയാമോ? ചേട്ടാ, HbA1c എന്താണെന്ന് പറയണോ?
ഒന്ന് പറഞ്ഞുതരാം, കാരണം നമ്മളുടെ ഈ ക്ലാസ്സിൽ ഇല്ലാത്തവരും ഉണ്ട്. പിന്നെ
HbA1c is the glycated hemoglobin. Glycosyl group is added to the N terminal of the valine residue of hemoglobin. So that represent a 2 to 3 month average of our blood glucose. So HbA1c is considered to be had been considered to be the gold standard of the glycemic control in diabetes. To be normal, HbA1c should be below 5.7%, and in pre-diabetes patients, the value is 5.7 to 6.4%, and you will be categorized as a diabetes patient if you have an HbA1c value of 6.5%. And when it comes to fasting plasma glucose, normal is below 100 milligram per deciliter, And pre-diabetes, it's between 100 to 125. And for diabetes patients, it is more than equal or more than 126 milligram per deciliter. And oral glucose tolerance test, it is normal below 140 mg per deciliter. Pre-diabetes, it's between 140 to 200 milligram per deciliter, and diabetes 200 milligram equal or more than 200 milligram per deciliter. So these values are recommended by American Diabetes Association. So it's an apex body that give treatment recommendation, treatment management recommendations every year. So major researchers are based upon these recommendations, whether it's molecular researchers or clinical researchers. The recommendation by American Diabetes Association are considered to be the Bible. So all the researchers are based upon this. And the glycemic targets. So as I earlier said, whenever we are treating or managing diabetes, our goal is to make your glucose level in the recommended range, at the same time eliminating the risk of hypoglycemia. So the glycemic targets for non-pregnant adults with diabetes, the A1C should be below 7%, and pre-prandial plasma glucose should be between 80 to 130, and post-prandial plasma glucose should be less than 180 mg per deciliter. So this is here it's said to be non-pregnant, because for pregnant women we need more stringent control. And also all these glycemic targets are categorized based for a different group, because normal healthy like normal patients and diabetes patients and elderly patients. Elderly patients mean those people with more complications, and very old patients. So for them the targets will be less, but for pregnant women the target will be more stringent. So the targets as well as the management are always devised to be like they are tailor made for different groups. And now a major recommendation says that the treatment and management should be individualized and gender based, because each person's body is different, and how they respond to different treatment and drugs and intervention will be different. So the treatment and drugs should be tailor made. That's a major recommendation. And when I'm talking about HbA1c, it used to be a golden standard of glycemic control, but that has been gradually replaced by a newer concept called time in range. That's because HbA1c has certain limitation. Because what is HbA1c? It is the average of glycated hemoglobin uh, for a period of 2 to 3 months. So that is dependent on your RBC level. And so HbA1c has certain limitation, because RBC may not be, or HB level may not be the same for all patients. What about patients who have anemia or organ transplantation, and another physiological condition like diabetes, where anemia is not diabetes, pregnancy, where anemia is very common. So for those patients who are anemic, the HbA1c values may not represent the actual glycemic control. And another point is glycemic variability. You know what is glycemic variability? Because the glucose level changes throughout the day. We might be looking at one level, one point, like fasting blood sugar or postprandial glucose, one ppg and one fbs, but your glucose level changes throughout the day. So that's called glycemic variability. At some point it might be going down, and at some point it might be going up. but HbA1c is a single value which is an average. So that doesn't represent the glycemic variability, which is and recording glycemic variability is very important in diabetes. So time in range is the percentage of percentage of a time a person spent in the normal recommended level, that is 70 to 180 milligram per deciliter. So how many hours or what percentage of a day's time is spent in this normal range or target range. So this is a new concept which is included in the 2020 ADA recommendation. So it is recommended that for type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes patients, they should spend more than 70% of a day's time, that is approximately 17 hours in the normal range, that is 70 to 180. And if you're going below, that is below 70 milligram per deciliter, you are supposed to spend only less than 4%. Less than 4%, less than 4 percentage means it is around 1 hour, 56 minutes. So this red area which is below 70, it's called time below range. And if you go up, that is above 180 milligram per deciliter, you are supposed to spend, you means diabetes patient are supposed to spend less than 25% of a day's time, that is a 6 hour. And these are like type 2 hyperglycemia and type 2 hypoglycemia, which is the severe condition. And to like what you need to understand is if you are a diabetes patient, you should spend more than 70% of your time in the recommended time in recommended target level, and the time below range should be less than 4%, and you should minimize the time spent below above recommended range. And this is the time recommended time, like time in range should be 16 hour 48 minutes. Below 70 it should be 58 minutes. Below 54 it will be it should be 14 minutes, and above 180 milligram per deciliter 6 hour, and above 250 1 hour 12 minutes. And as I said, a time in range is the major area of research now, because what data we have is all it's all about HbA1c, how HbA1c correlate with the treatment satisfaction, how HbA1c correlate with the glycemic control, and how HbA1c and other comorbidities are correlated. But time in range is a very new concept, and we don't have much data. This has been just introduced into the recommendation, and the wider acceptability of this metric will depend on the result of all these studies. So how time in range, how the first question is how time in range is correlated with HbA1c, or whether it is correlated or not, and whether the correlation changes in different population, different ethnicity, and different patient groups. And then the second is how time in range correlate with different comorbidities like diabetic retinopathy, cardiovascular disorder, diabetic nephropathy, etc. So in our center, we are also actually we have already published a conference abstract on how time in range and HbA1c correlate in the Indian population. And then we are trying to study how different treatment regimens, or which are the medications that improve time in range in diabetes patients more, which is the more, yeah, which in the with regard to time in range, which is the best medication and which is the best combination to recommend. And now coming to the management, there are three major components for the management of diabetes. The first one is always diet and exercise. Unless and until you are a type 1 diabetes patient who are not able to exercise, all other diabetes patients are recommended to do daily exercise. And the second one is oral hypoglycemic therapy, and the third one is insulin therapy. And when it comes to diet and exercise, physical activity promote weight reduction and improve insulin sensitivity, and thus lowering blood glucose levels. So together with dietary treatment, a regular physical activity program and exercise should be considered for each person, and this should be tailor-made for individual person. And such a program must be tailored, to the individual health status and fitness. And people should, however, be educated about the potential risk of hypoglycemia and how to avoid it. So here, one point I want to highlight is the importance of diabetes education. Mostly in our clinics, diabetes education was earlier it was not given much importance, but now clinics are focusing on diabetes education, and also the importance of educating the whole family, because there might be people who are at higher risk of there must be people who are pre-diabetes, or some people must be at higher risk of developing diabetes. And it's a major career field also, diabetes education and patient education. So that's an emerging career field also. And after the exercise and dietary interventions, there are oral hypoglycemic agents. And over the past 100 years, more than 10 different categories of anti-diabetic medications have been developed. The major ones are sulfonylurea, biguanidines, thiazolidinediones, and DPP4 inhibitor. And uh, so these are the major ones. And DPP4 inhibitor, one point is that it's an emerging class of oral hypoglycemic agents, and a lot of clinical trials are going on this area to find out the safety, efficacy, as well as cost effectiveness of these medications. And along with exercise and dietary interventions, these DPP4 inhibitors are shown to be very effective in the management of type 2 diabetes. So one research in our field, one study in our center focused that whether DPP4 inhibitor along with diet and exercise be more effective compared to insulin in the type 2 diabetes management, because insulin, there are no oral insulin. Insulin is till now it's injectable. So most of the patients don't prefer getting insulin injection. So DPP4 inhibitor is an oral hypoglycemic agent, and if it is more effective than insulin combination, most of the patients will prefer this. So that's one research ongoing. And then in this 10 different categories we have enlisted, which one of these do you think has received a Nobel Prize for its discovery? Ariamo? It's only for insulin a Nobel Prize was awarded, and that was in 1923. It was Banting and MacLeod who were awarded with Nobel Prize, but later the money was shared with Best. And since this is the 100th year of insulin discovery, I will share 2-3 slides on pre-insulin era and about the discovery of insulin. So the pre-insulin era, it was considered as the pissing evil, because before the discovery of insulin in 1921, the chance of death for a child diagnosed with type 1 diabetes was 100%. ബിക്കോസ് അവരെ പട്ടിണിക്കിടുക എന്നുള്ളതായിരുന്നു. കാരണം ഭക്ഷണം കൊടുത്താൽ ഡയബറ്റിസ് കീറ്റോസിഡോസിസ് എന്നുള്ള കണ്ടീഷൻ ഉണ്ടാവും. അപ്പോൾ പട്ടിണിക്കിട്ട് എത്ര നാൾ ജീവിക്കുന്നോ അത്രയും നാൾ ജീവിക്കട്ടെ എന്നുള്ളതായിരുന്നു പ്രീ ഇൻസുലിൻ എറയിലെ ഒരു കൺസെപ്റ്റ്. and providing hope for the first time to all those people who are suffering from this debilitating disease, diabetes. The experiments were started in 1920. It was Banting's idea, and Banting, who was a physician, along with his assistant Best, they have started the experiments in 1921 and made pancreatic extract, and this was tested on dog. And then after seeing that the experiment is successful, they have started experimenting and giving this pancreatic extract to human, and that was much later. And these are the fantastic four of insulin discovery. And this is Banting, whose idea, who is the main person behind insulin discovery, and the Best, his assistant. And this is MacLeod, who was the professor or in charge of the professor or the head of the department in the Toronto University, where the experiments were conducted. And he provided the information and knowledge on the structure of insulin. And this is James Collip, who was a biochemist, and he was the one who actually purified insulin. And this is the first patient, a 14-year-old boy, Leonard Thompson, who received insulin, the first person to receive insulin. And later, Eli Lilly has, years after, Eli Lilly produced the first commercial insulin called Elitin, and then it was magic. So the discovery of insulin is the most cherished moment in the history of diabetes management. And then this is a slide showing that how did humanity benefit with the discovery of insulin. So it clearly shows that the life expectancy of people with diabetes has increased from here to here after the discovery of insulin. And coming to the, so we already discussed the three major components in the management of diabetes. And now the major question is whether diabetes can be prevented. So this is the most recent American Diabetes Association recommendation, which is showing that intensive lifestyle behavior change program that consists of moderate intensity physical activity, at least 150 minutes per week, is recommended for diabetes prevention in pre-diabetes patients. And a variety of eating patterns can be considered to prevent diabetes in individuals with pre-diabetes. And this is the global recommendation, but we South Asians have a like our body stature is different than different. So RSSDI is the apex body, diabetes apex body in India. So we make modification of this. Those people make modifications of these recommendations. So for Indians, it is recommended that we should exercise 100-minute more. That is, if it's globally, it is 150-minute per week. For Indians, it should be 250-minute per week to effectively prevent the diabetes progression. And also, it is shown that with proper exercise as well as diet plans, diabetes remission can be achieved. Diabetes remission means like your blood glucose levels are in the normal range without any medication. So that is another area, whether which is the appropriate diet plan that can provide you with diabetes remission, and what is the best recommended physical activities. That is also a major study going on in our center to study. So can you ആർക്കെങ്കിലും പറയാൻ പറ്റുമോ നമ്മൾ വീട്ടിൽ തന്നെ കഴിക്കുന്ന ഒരുപാട് സാധനങ്ങളുണ്ടല്ലോ, ഷുഗർ ഉണ്ടാവില്ല, ഷുഗർ കുറയ്ക്കും എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് അമ്മയും അമ്മൂമ്മമാരും ഒക്കെ നമുക്ക് തരുന്നത്. അപ്പം അങ്ങനെ എന്തെങ്കിലും ഓർക്കുന്നുണ്ടോ? ഈ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അറിയാവോ നമ്മുടെ ഡയറ്റ് പ്ലാനിൽ ഇൻക്ലൂഡ് ചെയ്യുക, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അത് കഴിക്കാം ടു പ്രിവെന്റ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ടു മാനേജ് ഡയബറ്റിസ് എന്നുള്ളത്? അതെന്തായാലും അറിയായിരിക്കും. ഓക്കെ, എന്തോ
ആൻസർ വന്നിട്ടുണ്ട് ഒരു
എന്തോ
ഉലുവ വെള്ളം എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞൊരു ആൻസർ വന്നിട്ടുണ്ട്.
ആണോ? ഞാനും അത് തന്നെ പറയാം. അത് തന്നെ, ഉലുവാപ്പൊടിയിലാണ് നമ്മുടെ അവിടെ റിസർച്ച് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. ഞാൻ പക്ഷെ കേട്ടില്ല, കേൾക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്നുണ്ടായിരുന്നില്ല. ഫെനുബ്രിക് പൗഡർ ആൻഡ് ഇറ്റ്സ് ഗ്ലൈസീമിക് ആക്ടിവിറ്റി ഒരു റിസർച്ച്, ഒരു സ്റ്റഡിയാണ് അവിടെ നടക്കുന്നത്. ആക്ച്വലി ഗ്രാജുവേറ്റ് ലെവലിലും പോസ്റ്റ് ഗ്രാജുവേഷൻ ലെവലിലും ഒക്കെ ഒരുപാട് കുട്ടികൾ റിസർച്ച് ചെയ്യുന്നതാണല്ലോ ഈ എന്താ പറയുന്നത് ആന്റി ഗ്ലൈസീമിക് ആക്ടിവിറ്റി ഓഫ് ഇതുപോലത്തെ എന്താ പറയുന്നത് ഫുഡും ഡയറ്റ് പ്ലാൻസിൻ്റെതും. ഓക്കെ, and the last part is like when you have medications and you have insulin, but the key component is diabetes self management education and diabetes self management support. So it should be the patient and the family who should take the responsibility. Clinicians and the other people can give you the support and proper guidance, but it should be the patients and the family who should be taking proper responsibility to control his or her own diabetes management. ടൈപ്പ് 1 ഇത് ടൈപ്പ് 2 ഡയബറ്റിസിന്റെ കാര്യമാണ് നമ്മൾ സംസാരിക്കുന്നത്. ബിക്കോസ് ടൈപ്പ് 1 ഡയബറ്റിസ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് കൂടുതലും യങ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ആൾക്കാർക്ക് കാണുന്നതാണ്. കൂടുതലും 20 ഇയറിന് താഴെയുള്ള ആൾക്കാർക്കാണ്. അപ്പൊ അവിടെ എപ്പോഴും ഒരു കെയർ ഗീവർ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു പേരന്റ് ഉണ്ടായിരിക്കും അസോസിയേറ്റഡ് വിത്ത് ദം. ബട്ട് ടൈപ്പ് 2 ഡയബറ്റിസ് മെലിറ്റസിന് the patient should take the responsibility എന്നാണ് പറയുന്നത്. So that should be with blood glucose monitoring, body weight monitoring, food care, personal hygiene, healthy lifestyle, diet or physical activity, identify target for control and stopping smoking. So these are the key factors to focus on. So till this point I plan to give an overall idea or overall picture of the diabetes management. So that was so till this point it was about that. And now coming to the future, what are the major or path-breaking discoveries which are ongoing in diabetes field? So the first one is definitely artificial pancreas system. So artificial pancreas system, it's a combination of 3 parts. Continuous glucose monitor which is attached to your body and monitor your glucose level 24/7. And then these glucose information is transferred to a computer controlled algorithm, and then this algorithm will give instructions to an insulin pump that is also attached to your body, and then insulin pump will deliver insulin according to your meal and according to your body activity. So that's the whole idea of artificial pancreas system. There are major giants like Medtronic and Bionics, Diabeloop. So all these are the industrial giants in diabetes research who are working on the development of artificial pancreas system. And some are already in the market, but it is not available for a wider population because the regulatory requirements are quite stringent. and also it's these artificial pancreas systems are considered to be very expensive. So most of the people cannot cannot afford it. So there is another a revolution going on, that is do it yourself artificial pancreas system. So the normally these parts like continuous glucose monitoring, computer control algorithm, and insulin pump are commercialized. But for do it yourself artificial pancreas system, you use obsolete thing and develop a control algorithm by yourself. There are coding programs available on site. There are groups called Loop, Android APS, and Loop, Android APS, and IPS. So there are groups working on this, working on the development of do it yourself artificial pancreas system. So the codes are already available on the net. So you can access the code and develop your own algorithm and connect your continuous glucose monitor and insulin pump. That's called, so the system is supposed to function like your pancreas. So that's why it's called artificial pancreas system. So in India, the first patient who is using do it yourself in artificial pancreas system, the commercialized systems are not available in India, but the do it yourself, the first patient on do it yourself artificial pancreas system is Jas Sethi. So we have recently published a patient experience, like what was her experience in using do-it-yourself artificial pancreas system in a journal called Diabetes Metabolism and Syndrome, Journal of Diabetes Metabolism and Syndrome. It will be online in 1 week, 1 or 2 weeks. And the second major invention invention is smart insulin. So these are in pills, and they are specific glucose responsive insulins, and they are designed to turn on when they are needed and off when they are not. So these insulins can make hypos-hysteria and help ensure perfect glucose control throughout any given day. And the another major area of research is the endogenous pancreatic beta cell regeneration. And even like in RGCB, my lab was also working on that, and the research is going on how we can regenerate pancreatic beta cells. So if on like once succeeded, this pancreatic beta cells can be implanted into type 1 diabetes patients and as a treatment. And so this is about the diabetes. The major part of the presentation is still now. And then another major project in which I am working on, the major project I am working on is about gender differences in glycemic management. So we know male and female are we have different metabolic and physiological traits, like the skeletal muscle mass and adipose, the gender differences in adipose tissue and adipokines, and then differences in the steroid hormones level, and gender-based differences in glucose metabolism. And when it comes to women, there are more chances of gestational diabetes mellitus, and that is a predisposing factor for the development of type 2 diabetes mellitus later. So whether these physiological and metabolic traits contribute to differences in glycemic management or glycemic control, അങ്ങനെ എന്തെങ്കിലും ഉണ്ടാവാൻ ചാൻസ് ഉണ്ടോ ഈ ഡിഫറൻസസ് ഗ്ലൈസമിക് മാനേജ്മെന്റിന് കാരണമാകുമോ? അത് ആ സ്റ്റഡിയിലാണ് ഞാൻ ആക്ച്വലി ആദ്യം സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്തതും ഇപ്പോഴും വർക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരു മേജർ പ്രോജക്റ്റ് അതാണ്. So there was a follow-up study, actually retrospective study, where female and male patients with diabetes mellitus were followed up for a period of 5 years. And then we saw how the parameters like HbA1c, systolic blood pressure, diabetes blood pressure, LDL, and fasting blood sugar vary in female and male. And these are the differences from the baseline value. When you start your work, you have a particular value, say 5.6% of HbA1c. And this shows that each year, like by the end of the second year, in female, it was less than 1.3 compared to the baseline. And here you can see that the HbA1c level after the fifth 5 year, in female it is less than 0.75, and in male it is 0.93. And coming to SBP, uh, there was no difference in female. The SBP level increased, and in male there was a significant decrease in the SBP level. And diastolic blood pressure, in female the reduction was 6.61, and in male the reduction was 7.81. And LDL, the reduction was 22.88 in female, and in males it was 23.91. And the fasting blood sugar, uh, compared to the baseline values, of female had a reduction in 2.596 mg per deciliter, and in male the reduction was 6.205. So it clearly shows that compared to male, female experience difficulty in managing their glycemic outcomes. So what can be the reasons? So the reasons can be different. Social challenges like gender discrimination, family responsibility, because women always keep family at the priority. They keep their own they tend to keep their fitness or other medication second. And then education, stress, physiological challenges like body weight and obesity, hormone changes, cardiovascular risk, gestational diabetes, and genetic susceptibility, and economic challenges, financial constraints, and cost of comprehensive care. And in agreement with this data, a recent study from India, it published published that women with diabetes experience challenges during COVID-19 pandemic, and the same reasons are attributed. So to summarize, diabetes is a complex disorder. Better management is possible through medications and lifestyle interventions. Patient education and support play inevitable roles in the management of diabetes. Individualized management is important, and the management should focus to lower hypoglycemia and other comorbidities, to improve time in range, patient satisfaction, and quality of life. And all the future research should be conducted in a patient-centric manner. Thank you. And questions.